My name is Megan Foster. I'm 29 years old, and I restore things for a living. Old maps, cracked frames, warped canvases, broken pieces people think are too far gone to save. I live in Anchorage now, where cold air has never bothered me half as much as family disappointment. 3 days before Christmas, my father called sounding softer than I'd heard in years. He said he missed me, said the house felt wrong without me, said the holidays didn't feel like holidays unless I came home. I knew better than to trust that voice, but grief makes people stupid in very specific ways. And 6 months after losing my grandfather, I still wanted to believe home might feel like home one more time. So I took the flight. 10 hours, one layover, a stiff neck, airport coffee, and that old tight feeling in my chest I get whenever I trade peace for hope. By the time I reached the house in Charleston, it was dark. The porch lights were on. Laughter spilled through the front windows. I walked up carrying my overnight bag, and one small wrapped gift I'd bought, because part of me still plays nice even when I know I shouldn't. My mother opened the door, looked at me once, and didn't smile. She stepped aside and said, "Good. You're here. You'll babysit your sister's kids while we're gone." Behind her, my sister was zipping a suitcase. Her son had frosting on his face. Her daughter was dragging a stuffed rabbit by one ear across the hardwood floor. My sister laughed, pointed at me, and told the kids, "Don't wipe your snot on Aunt Megan." Everybody laughed. I didn't. I just stood there with my coat still on, staring at all of them, and realized my father hadn't flown me home for Christmas. He'd flown me home to be useful. And when I finally answered, the room changed so fast my mother actually grabbed the edge of the wall. "Before I tell you what I said and what happened after I walked deeper into that house, tell me, what time is it for you right now and where are you watching from? I want to see just how far this story reaches." I didn't say another word right away, because silence has always made my family more nervous than anger. I took off my gloves slowly, set my bag by the staircase, and looked past them into the house I grew up in. It was the same broad hallway, the same black and white tile, the same antique mirror my grandfather used to polish with a soft cloth every Sunday morning. But the feeling was different. Everything I loved about that house had come from him. Not from the people standing in front of me acting like I'd just arrived for a shift. I should explain something before I go further. My family didn't start out rich, but they loved looking like they were. My father, Robert Foster, loved anything that made him sound established. My mother, Diane, loved anything that made her sound admired. And my older sister, Lauren, inherited both instincts. Lauren could turn any room into a stage. She always had the right laugh, the right angle, the right story about how hard motherhood was as long as somebody else handled the exhausting parts. I was the opposite. I was the quiet one, the useful one, the one who cataloged my grandfather's old letters when nobody else cared. The one who knew which family silver was actually sterling, and which portrait had water damage under the varnish. When I was 17, my grandfather started calling me his steady hands. He said the rest of the family only loved things they could sell, or show off, or post. I thought he was being dramatic back then. I don't anymore. After college, I took the farthest job I could find that still felt honest. Museum conservation in Anchorage wasn't glamorous, but it was real. I spent my days saving damaged objects and my nights taking calls from home whenever someone needed something tedious fixed. Lauren wanted me to proof school applications, dispute daycare charges, and plan birthday budgets. My mother wanted me to organize the household inventory after Grandpa's fall because, according to her, "You're the only one who can read his handwriting." My father wanted me to help with property records, tax letters, insurance renewals, easement papers, and every ugly administrative mess tied to the old Foster house. The same house he now treated as if it were his by divine right. And because I was stupid in the reliable way, I helped. Even after moving 2,000 miles away, I was still the one they called when a form was confusing, a bill was late, a contractor overcharged, or a document needed reading before somebody signed it blindly. The last year of Grandpa's life changed everything. Lauren kept saying the house should be modernized. My mother talked constantly about unlocking the property's value. My father kept hinting that once probate was done, they'd finally run the place like a proper asset. Grandpa heard all of it. So did I. And during the months before he died, when I spent long evenings beside his bed reading him catalog notes and estate drafts, he asked me questions nobody else bothered asking. Who actually keeps this house together? Who reads before signing? Who notices when things go missing? Who do I trust not to sell my life in pieces? I didn't know then what he planned to do with those answers. By the time he died, all I knew was that the lawyer handling his estate had asked me to keep an eye on my email because some final decisions may surprise the rest of them. Standing in that front hall with Lauren's suitcase scraping the floor and my mother already reaching for her travel mug, I realized that while they thought they had summoned their unpaid babysitter, I might have arrived at exactly the wrong moment for them. My mother hated being ignored, so of course she was the first to crack. "Megan," she said sharply, like I was a receptionist who'd missed a cue. "Don't just stand there. We're already late." Lauren rolled her eyes and pushed her daughter gently toward me. "Emma, go say hi to Aunt Megan. Caleb, grab your tablet and don't get jam on the sofa this time." There was no warmth in any of it. No "how was your flight?" No "we missed you." Just instructions, logistics, entitlement. Caleb gave me that awkward half-shrug older kids do when they know the adults around them are being weird, but don't have the language for it yet. Emma looked sleepy and sticky and too young to understand why her mother was already dressed for a trip that didn't include her. I crouched down, hugged them both, and felt the immediate stab of resentment that always comes when innocent kids are used as cover for selfish adults. "How long?" I asked without looking up. "4 nights," Lauren said. Then my father appeared from the dining room holding his car keys and corrected her. 5 if the roads stay clear." 5. He'd begged me onto a 10-hour trip so they could dump 2 children on me for 5 days and disappear. "You said Christmas," I told him. "It is Christmas," my mother snapped. "For us too." Then she gave that little impatient wave she used whenever she wanted to turn cruelty into common sense. "Honestly, Megan, you live alone. You don't have children. This isn't exactly some terrible burden for you." That line got me more than the rest because it was so familiar. They've always translated my independence into availability. No husband free, no kids free, quiet apartment free, professional life that doesn't revolve around them, obviously less important than theirs. Lauren smirked and said, "Relax. It's not like you had hot holiday plans in Alaska." I looked up then, really looked at her. Camel coat, fresh manicure, new luggage tag, gold hoops. She didn't look overwhelmed or desperate. She looked delighted. On the entry table beside her sat a folder I recognized immediately because I'd assembled it weeks earlier. Estate correspondence related to Grandpa's property. My name was printed on one of the tabs. My mother noticed me noticing it and moved in front of it too fast. That tiny motion told me more than anything else in the room. "What's that?" I asked. "Nothing you need to worry about tonight," my father said. "Too fast, too flat. You worry about the children." There it was again. The reduction, the demotion. I was not family when gifts were passed out, decisions were made, vacations were planned, or grief was shared. I became family only when labor was needed. Emma tugged my sleeve and whispered, "Grandma said you'd be here because you don't really have anybody." My chest went hollow. Kids repeat truth the way adults reveal it by accident. I smiled at her because none of this was her fault, then stood back up slowly and set my gaze on my mother. "Did you tell them that?" I asked. My mother actually had the nerve to sigh like I was embarrassing her. "Don't start." Lauren laughed. "Oh my God. She's going to do the wounded face. Mom, I told you this would happen." My father checked his watch and said, "We don't have time for one of Megan's moods." One of Megan's moods. As if being treated like hired help after a cross-country flight was a phase I'd eventually grow out of. That was when I felt something subtle inside me. Not rage exactly. Rage burns hot and stupid. This was colder, clearer. The kind of feeling I get at the museum when I uncover original pigment beneath years of dirt, and suddenly know exactly what I'm looking at. I was not confused anymore. I was not even surprised. I was just done pretending I still expected better. I reached for the estate folder before my mother could stop me, glanced once at the center line from Hanley and Mercer Probate Council, and saw the date. That morning. Something had finalized that morning. My mother snatched the folder back, but it was too late. I didn't know every detail yet. I didn't need to. I only needed to know they were hiding something from me while using me. And that combination in my family never meant anything harmless. That first night, after they finally left in a swirl of perfume, rolling suitcases, fake urgency, and last-minute instructions barked at me like I was a substitute nanny. I got the kids fed, bathed, and asleep before I let myself think. Caleb wanted grilled cheese. Emma wanted strawberries cut into stars. They were good kids. Not saints, not tiny movie angels, just ordinary children who had already learned how to read the emotional weather of a room. Caleb asked if his mom was coming back for real this time, because apparently Lauren had abandoned more than one school pickup in the last year. I told him yes, because I wasn't going to load adult truth onto a 10-year-old. Once they were asleep upstairs, I carried that estate folder to the kitchen island and spread the papers under the pendant light. Copies were missing, but enough remained to tell me what my mother hadn't wanted me to see. Probate had closed that morning. Grandpa's house, the carriage house out back, the archival collection, and the preservation account attached to all of it had been transferred into a trust. Not to my father outright, not to my parents jointly, into the Walter Foster Preservation Trust, with me named as acting managing trustee and primary residential beneficiary, effective immediately upon final filing. I sat there with my hands flat on the paper for a full minute, just breathing. Then I called the number on the letterhead. Mr. Hanley answered on the third ring like he'd been waiting for it. "Megan," he said, not sounding surprised at all. I wondered how long it would take. I asked him one question first. Did they know? He gave me the lawyer version of yes. Your father was informed that the house would not pass directly to him because of your grandfather's documented concerns regarding asset depletion, attempted liquidation of protected objects, and repeated misuse of maintenance funds. Your mother was copied on the final notice. You were named managing trustee because your grandfather's addendum described you as the only family member who treated the property as history rather than inventory. I laughed once then, but there was nothing funny in it. So they knew this morning that I was the person with legal authority over the house, and they still flew me in to babysit while they left town. That, Mr. Hanley said carefully, appears to be the case. He explained the structure in plain terms. After that, the family could continue residing there temporarily, but only under trust conditions. No sale of fixtures, no use of the house as short-term rental inventory, no unsanctioned loans against the property, no removal of documented antiques, and no structural changes without trustee approval. If those conditions were already being violated, and he strongly suspected they were, I had the power to freeze access, order an inventory, change security, and require either compliance or vacancy. I thought about the new luggage, the hidden folder, Lauren's desperate rush to get me inside and stationary, my mother's panic when I glanced at the paperwork. Then I thought about all the little things from the past year. Estate silver gone missing from photos, a guest room suddenly staged like a boutique rental online, property tax notices forwarded to me too late, my father asking odd questions about bridge loans and equity lines. They were going to use the house while I watched the kids, I murmured. They already have, Mr. Hanley replied. And your grandfather anticipated exactly that. The strangest part wasn't the legal reveal. It was the immediate calm that came after it. Not joy, not triumph, just alignment. The whole house made sense now. My mother's performance, my father's urgency, Lauren's mockery. They hadn't brought me home because they needed help with the children. They brought me home because the one person standing between them and full control of the property had just landed exhausted after a 10-hour flight. They assumed I would smile, swallow it, and become convenient again. Mr. Hanley asked if I wanted to wait until they returned before doing anything formal. I looked around the kitchen Grandpa loved, at the hand-carved banister visible from the doorway, at the ledger cabinet my father had once tried to pry open with a screwdriver because he thought old papers might contain bearer bonds. And I made the cleanest decision of my adult life. No, I said. We start tomorrow. The next 5 days were the most peaceful and the most devastating holiday I'd ever had. Peaceful because once I knew the truth, I stopped second-guessing myself. Devastating because every room in that house showed me how casually my family had been preparing to strip it. I kept the kids on a gentle rhythm. Pancakes, board games, movie nights, walks on the Battery when the weather held, cocoa and paper cups too big for their hands. Caleb opened up first. He told me Grandpa used to let him guard the old room upstairs where the paintings and papers were kept. Until Grandma, my mother, because Lauren's kids call my parents Grandma and Granddad, started locking it and telling him not to tell guests what used to be there. Emma proudly showed me a video her mom had filmed in the blue guest room, describing it as one of the premium suites. My stomach dropped. Premium suites in a protected trust house. I searched the listing sites that night and found them. Styled photos of the east bedrooms, the carriage house, even Grandpa's study, advertised under a fake hospitality name with Lauren's contact number attached. My father had also drafted an inquiry about using the property as collateral for a renovation loan. None of it had been approved. All of it had my grandfather's handwriting spinning in my head. They love heritage until it slows down their greed. I documented everything. Mr. Hanley sent an inventory specialist. I let him in while the kids decorated gingerbread in the breakfast room. A locksmith came the following afternoon to rekey exterior entries in the archive room. But on my instruction, new keys for family use were not issued until legal notices could be served in person. A property photographer documented pre-existing wear, missing pieces, and the rooms currently staged for rental use. I canceled the active listings. I suspended unauthorized reservations. I redirected trust mail to a private box in my name. None of it was dramatic in the movie sense. Nobody stormed in. Nobody screamed. It was all signatures, timestamps, chain of custody notes, and a very calm man in a navy blazer labeling 18th century chairs while Emma asked if his clipboard was from Santa. The children, meanwhile, kept showing me pieces of the emotional map I'd ignored for years. Lauren told them I was lucky to visit because I didn't have a real family. My mother told them I was good at helping because I never built anything of my own. My father apparently complained within earshot that I collect dead people's junk for a living, which is a funny way to describe preserving national history, but perfectly on brand for him. Every cruel little simplification they used on me had already been planted in the next generation. That hurt more than the babysitting trap ever could. By day 4, Lauren started texting only about logistics. Did Emma nap? Did Caleb finish his reading packet? Where's the purple sweater? Make sure they don't have too much sugar. Not one message asked how I was. Not one said thank you. My mother sent exactly one check-in, and it wasn't about the children. It was about whether anyone had been in the front office. I wrote back, plenty of people. She called 3 times. I didn't answer. On the last night of their trip, I sat at Grandpa's desk after the kids were asleep and read the final addendum to the trust in full. There, tucked between legal clauses and preservation standards, was one handwritten note attached to the executed copy. Megan, if they ever make you feel like you have no place here, remember this house did not survive because of loud people. It survived because someone quiet kept caring after everyone else got careless. I cried then, not because I was weak, but because for the first time in my life, someone in my family had left me proof that being the reliable one was not the same as being invisible. I folded the note back into its sleeve, wiped my face, and texted Mr. Hanley one final instruction. When they arrive tomorrow, I want the notices ready before they open the front door. Then I went upstairs, checked on the kids, and stood in the hallway listening to their breathing. They were innocent. So my revenge was never going to be about chaos. It was going to be about order. Real order. The kind my family had never respected because it couldn't be manipulated with guilt. When they finally came back, the driveway filled with expensive luggage, shopping bags, and the kind of relaxed chatter people use when they assume the hard part of life waited obediently for them at home. I was in the front hall with Caleb and Emma beside me, their overnight backpacks already packed because Lauren's ex-mother-in-law had agreed to take them for 2 nights once the adults arrived. I was not letting those children sit through what was about to happen. My father unlocked the front gate, saw the legal sedan parked at the curb, and froze. Lauren kept laughing until she saw me standing there in a plain cream sweater with a folder in my hand, and no trace of apology on my face. My mother looked from me to the attorney's courier envelope on the entry table, and started shaking her head before anyone said a word. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." My father tried bluster first. "What is this?" he barked. "A correction," I said. Lauren dropped her bags. "Do not tell me you actually went through Grandpa's paperwork while we were gone," she snapped, as if I'd snooped through her diary instead of the trust documents tied to a house I now legally managed. Caleb looked up at me, uncertain, and I squeezed his shoulder gently before sending him and Emma out with Miss Dalton's mother, who was waiting in the car. Once the kids were gone, the masks came off fast. "Megan," my mother said, already breathless. "Whatever dramatic conclusion you've jumped to, we can talk about this privately." "We could have talked privately before you lured me across the country to dump your daughter's kids on me," I said. "You chose not to." My father stepped forward. "This is still my house." I handed him the first page. "No, it isn't." He scanned the heading, saw the trust seal, and went pale around the mouth. Lauren snatched the second notice and read enough to understand the part that mattered. Unauthorized rental activity suspended. Preservation violations under review. Trustee access secured. Residential occupancy subject to immediate compliance terms. "You can't do this," she said. "I already did." Then, because it had been sitting inside me since the front door opened 5 days earlier, I finally gave them the line that matched the look on my mother's face in the hook. I smiled and said, "Enjoy the trip." "Fine. But when you came back, this house answers to me." That was when Lauren truly lost it. She called me bitter, pathetic, lonely, vindictive. My father said Grandpa had been manipulated in his final months. My mother did the saddest thing of all. She tried to cry her way back into moral authority. "After everything we've done for you," she whispered, which might be the most insulting phrase a selfish parent can say, because it always ignores the math. I opened the full inventory packet on the table. Missing silver, active rental listings, preserved rooms staged for commercial use, loan inquiry against restricted property, maintenance funds misapplied. They all started talking at once, so I kept my voice level and cut straight through them. "Grandpa did not leave me this house because I was his favorite," I said. "He left it to me because I was the only person in this family who didn't treat it like a cash register." Silence. Real silence this time. Even my father didn't know how to shove past that. My mother sat down on the bench by the staircase like her knees gave out. "No," she kept whispering. "He wouldn't. He wouldn't." "He did," I said. "And he documented why." Lauren tried one final pivot. "So what now? You throw your own parents out? You humiliate your sister? You break up the whole family over paperwork?" "No," I said. "You did that when you turned me into staff and assumed I'd still thank you for the opportunity." Then I laid out the terms. 30 days to provide a compliance plan, immediate end to all unauthorized rentals, no borrowing against the property, return of documented items removed from the archive room. Any continued occupancy contingent on trust conditions, not blood relation. If they refused, sale proceedings could begin under the trust's enforcement language. My father cursed. Lauren laughed that ugly, disbelieving laugh people use when reality is too expensive to accept. And my mother just kept whispering, "No, no way, no way." Because somewhere under all her selfishness, she knew exactly why Grandpa had done it. He had watched them mistake access for ownership. He had watched them use me as a tool. He had watched them confuse loudness with authority. And now he had arranged for all of it to stop in a single week they thought would belong to them. My father told me I was dead to him. I said that would have scared me a week ago. Lauren said I'd regret this when nobody showed up for me. I almost laughed. Nobody had shown up for me already. That was the point. Then I stepped aside, opened the door, and told them they could collect themselves somewhere else for the evening because Trust Council had ordered the premises secured pending compliance review. For the second time in one holiday season, somebody in that family had to walk out of the house. This time it wasn't me. The aftermath was not one giant explosion. It was better than that. It was expensive, humiliating gravity. Lauren's fake hospitality listings disappeared overnight, and with them a stream of undeclared cash she'd clearly been counting on. My father's loan inquiry died the minute the trust restrictions were flagged formally with the bank. My mother had to call half the people she'd boasted to about expanding the property brand and explain why none of it was happening. For once, they weren't protected by my silence. They had 30 days, and they spent most of them doing what people like them always do first: blame the person who stopped enabling them. I got texts from cousins about how families should handle things quietly. I got one dramatic voicemail from Lauren accusing me of stealing her children's inheritance, which would have landed better if she hadn't spent the previous week trying to monetize the nursery wing. But then the harder truths began surfacing. Grandpa had not trusted them for years. He'd documented missing objects. He'd updated the trust after overhearing Lauren call the carriage house easy Airbnb money. He'd reduced my father's control after discovering maintenance funds had been used on a leased SUV. Once those details came out through counsel, the family gossip shifted. Suddenly, I wasn't the cold daughter from Alaska. I was the granddaughter who'd been handed a fire already burning behind the walls. The children stayed in my life, and that mattered more than anything. Lauren screamed at me. Caleb started emailing me photos of school projects. Emma mailed me a drawing of the front steps with all the windows colored blue because blue makes old houses feel safe. I kept the house, but not as a trophy. I brought in conservators, cataloged the archive properly, and opened the carriage house one weekend each month for a local history group, exactly the way Grandpa once hoped. I did not turn it into a boutique brand. I did not sell the silver. I did not polish my revenge into contempt. I just protected what should have been protected from the start. As for my parents, they never bought me out because they couldn't. They moved into a smaller rental near West Ashley after refusing the compliance terms for long-term occupancy. My father stopped calling the house mine after an attorney corrected him twice in writing. My mother still attends church in pressed coats and soft colors, but I'm told she has stopped using the phrase "family always comes first" quite so casually. Lauren found a smaller condo, lost a lot of her confidence, and for the first time in her adult life had to arrange and pay for childcare without assuming some woman in the family would absorb the cost. That part, I won't lie, was deeply satisfying. People ask whether I felt guilty. The honest answer is that I felt sad for about a week, then lighter every day after that. Because guilt only works when you've done something cruel. I didn't lure them home under false pretenses. I didn't laugh at them after a 10-hour flight. I didn't hand my responsibility to someone I barely respected. I just stopped cooperating with the lie that I existed to make their lives run smoothly. That was the storm. Not shouting, not broken glass, not some cartoon revenge speech. Just the end of access, the end of assumption, the end of that old family habit where the quiet daughter is expected to carry everything because she's too decent to drop it. Grandpa once told me, "Old houses survive because somebody notices the first crack and cares enough to stop pretending it's decorative." My family was full of cracks. I had spent years pretending they were charming. That Christmas, I finally stopped. And if there is anything worth keeping from my story, it's this. Being kind does not mean being available for misuse. Being reliable does not mean volunteering to be erased. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can say to people who only value you when you're useful is exactly what I said when I stood in that hallway and watched their faces change. Enjoy the trip. But when you come back, the house won't belong to your lies anymore. What makes this story so powerful is that the pain didn't come from strangers. It came from the people who should have loved and respected Megan the most. That's what makes her final stand feel so satisfying. She didn't choose cruelty. She chose self-respect, boundaries, and truth. In my opinion, that's the deepest kind of victory. What about you? Did Megan do the right thing? Or would you have handled your family differently in her place?